Hey, everyone, and welcome back. Today we are diving into thematic investing. It's fascinating, right? Putting your money where these massive global trends are that are
Absolutely.
literally reshaping our future.
Yeah.
So we're going to unpack all of that today using this research paper, Thematic Investing, More Than Just a Good Story, published in September 2024.
Yeah, I think it's a great choice for a source because thematic investing has just exploded
Oh, yeah.
in recent years. And this paper does a really good job of kind of cutting through the hype and
Yeah.
getting to the heart of what it's all about. And importantly, if it actually delivers on its promise of
All right,
returns.
because we've all heard those exciting stories about the rise of AI
Yeah.
or the shift toward renewable energy. But how do you actually translate those stories into a solid investment strategy? That's what I'm really trying to figure out today.
Well, I think first of all, it's important to understand that thematic investing goes beyond just picking a hot sector
Right.
or chasing the latest fad.
Yeah.
It's about identifying those powerful long-term forces that are reshaping the world. And we're not talking about short-term blips on the radar.
Right.
We're talking about trends that will play out over decades.
Okay, so think big picture.
Big picture.
Like, if I'm passionate about sustainability,
Yeah.
I could invest in companies that are leading the charge in renewable energy.
Yeah.
But just because I like the idea doesn't mean every company in that space is going to be a winner.
Exactly.
It's like fun.
A good story doesn't automatically translate
Right.
to a good investment.
Right.
And that's why one of the core principles of thematic investing
Yeah.
is focusing on investable themes.
Investable themes. Okay.
So think of it this way. You wouldn't just invest in any company that mentions AI
Right.
in their marketing materials.
Right.
You'd want to dig deeper.
Mm.
Do they have a truly innovative product? Do they have a defensible competitive advantage? Are they led by a strong management team with a vision?
Makes sense. It's about separating the hype from the real substance, just like in any other investment strategy.
Exactly.
But even if you found a solid theme, like, say, the growth of e-commerce,
Right.
how do you actually go about building a portfolio around it?
Well, that's where the idea of sub-themes comes in.
Okay.
It's about breaking down a broad theme into more specific investable segments.
Okay.
So instead of just looking at e-commerce as a whole,
Right.
you might zero in on sub-themes like online payments,
Yep.
logistics and delivery,
Uh-huh.
or even the technology that powers online marketplaces.
Right.
This helps you get really targeted.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this works.
Yeah.
You're essentially creating a roadmap
Yeah,
for your investments based on these sub-themes.
exactly.
So, for instance, if you believe that the future of transportation is electric,
Right.
you wouldn't just blindly invest in any electric vehicle company.
Right.
You might look at specific sub-themes like battery technology,
Right.
charging infrastructure, or even the software that manages those electric fleets.
Exactly. And by diversifying your portfolio across these different sub-themes,
Right.
you're not putting all your eggs in one basket. You're spreading your risk while still maintaining a focused exposure
Right.
to the overall thematic opportunity.
That's a great point about diversification.
Yeah.
But I do have one question. How do you know if a theme is truly investable? What separates a passing fad from a trend
Yeah.
that has real staying power?
Right.
I mean, we all remember fidget spinners,
Yeah, exactly.
fun for a minute, but not exactly a foundation for a long-term investment strategy.
You're shitting on a crucial point.
Okay.
To be a viable investment theme, a trend needs to have legs.
Okay.
We're talking decades, not just the next hot stock tip.
Right.
So think about the trends that are transforming the very fabric of society.
Yeah.
Demographic shifts, technological advancements, climate change,
Mm-hmm.
resource scarcity.
Yeah.
These are the kinds of massive long-term forces that create truly investable themes.
So let's take an example.
Okay.
The research paper mentions that by 2050, 70% of the world's population will live in cities,
Wow.
up from 54% in 2020.
That's a huge shift.
That's a huge shift.
Wow.
And it's not just about more people living in urban areas.
Right.
It's about the way cities are evolving.
Exactly. That's why urbanization is considered such a powerful thematic investment opportunity.
Right.
It's going to drive demand for everything from sustainable housing
Yeah.
and efficient transportation to smart infrastructure
Yeah.
and innovative technologies that make urban living more connected and convenient.
Right.
This is a trend that's going to play out for decades to come
Yeah.
and will have a profound impact on countless industries and companies.
It's fascinating to think about how these global trends translate into investment opportunities.
Yeah.
But you mentioned earlier that thematic investing has been getting some pushback. Some experts are skeptical
Right.
about whether it actually works.
Yeah.
They say that thematic funds often underperform the broader market.
What's your take on that? Well, it's true that there's no guarantee of success in any investment strategy,
Right.
including thematic investing.
Right.
But I think some of the skepticism stems from a misunderstanding of what thematic investing actually entails.
Okay.
It's not just about picking a hot theme and hoping for the best.
Okay.
It requires the same rigor and discipline
Right.
as any other active investment strategy.
You mean it's not a magic formula
Definitely not.
for getting rich quick?
Definitely not. It requires careful research, analysis, and ongoing monitoring.
Right.
You need to identify those truly investable themes,
Right.
dig deep into the sub-themes, and then carefully select the companies
Yeah.
that are best positioned to benefit from those trends.
So it sounds like thematic investing is more than just picking a good story.
Okay.
It's about understanding the fundamentals of the companies you're investing in.
Yes.
Their competitive landscape,
Yeah, right.
their management team,
Right.
their financials, all the things that matter in any investment decision.
Precisely. A compelling theme can certainly capture your imagination
Right.
and spark your interest,
Yeah.
but it's the underlying fundamentals
Yeah.
that will ultimately determine whether an investment is successful.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So let's say you've identified a theme that you believe in.
Right.
You've done your research.
Uh-huh.
You're ready to start building a portfolio.
Okay.
What are some of the key things to consider?
Yeah.
How do you actually translate those abstract themes into a concrete investment strategy?
That's a great question, and it's where things start to get really interesting.
Okay.
One of the key concepts in thematic investing is thematic purity.
Thematic purity. Now, that sounds intriguing.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
Essentially, it's about making sure that the companies in your portfolio are genuinely aligned with the sub-themes they're
Okay.
targeting.
Oh.
You don't want to invest in a company that just pays lip service to a trend,
Right.
but doesn't really have much skin in the game.
I see what you mean. So, for example, a company might claim to be involved in sustainable agriculture.
Right.
But if only a tiny fraction of their business is actually related to that theme,
Exactly.
then they're not really a pure play.
Exactly. You want to make sure that the companies in your portfolio are truly committed to the theme.
Right.
And that their business model is directly aligned with the trends you're betting on.
Okay.
And the research paper we're using as our guide today highlights several different approaches to measuring thematic purity.
So it's not just a subjective judgment call.
Right.
There are actual ways to quantify how closely a company's business
Yes.
is aligned with a particular theme.
That's right. One common approach is to look at product revenue.
Okay.
This involves analyzing how much of a company's income is directly tied to the chosen sub-theme.
Okay.
So if a company claims to be a leader in, say, plant-based meat alternatives,
Right.
you'd want to see that a significant portion of their revenue actually comes from those products.
That makes sense. But I can imagine that it's not always easy to get that kind of granular data.
Yeah,
Companies don't always break down their revenue in such specific ways, do they?
you're right. It can be tricky.
Yeah.
And that's why it's important to look beyond just product revenue.
Okay.
Another approach is to target specific sectors and sub-industries that are tightly linked to the theme.
Okay.
For instance, if you're investing in the urbanization theme,
Right.
you might focus on companies in the construction, real estate, or transportation sectors.
Right.
These are industries that are directly impacted by the growth of cities and the changing needs of urban populations.
Okay, so you're essentially narrowing your focus to those sectors
Yeah.
that are most likely to benefit from the thematic trend.
Exactly.
But I guess that approach also has its limitations, right?
Yeah.
You could miss out on companies that are indirectly, but still significantly impacted by the theme.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
It's like a ripple effect. The impact of a major theme can extend far beyond the companies that are directly involved.
Right.
Think about the rise of smartphones.
Yeah.
It wasn't just the phone manufacturers that benefited.
Right.
It was also the companies that made the chips.
Right.
The software, the apps, the accessories, a whole ecosystem of businesses sprang up around that one technological innovation.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
So if you're only looking at the most obvious players,
Right.
you might miss out on some of the hidden gems that are also benefiting from the theme.
Exactly. And that's where the third approach to measuring thematic purity comes in, using artificial intelligence and natural language processing.
Now, this sounds really cutting edge.
Mm.
How does AI fit into thematic investing?
Well, AI can be used to analyze massive amounts of data things like company reports, press releases, even social media posts.
Okay.
It can identify patterns and connections that humans might miss,
Right.
revealing companies that are talking about a sub-theme, even if it's not explicitly reflected in their product revenue or sector classification.
So it's not just about what a company's doing, it's also about what they're saying
Exactly.
and where they're focusing their attention.
Precisely. AI can help us uncover those hidden thematic connections.
Right.
And identify companies that are genuinely aligned with the trends we're interested in,
Yeah.
even if they're not the most obvious players in the space.
Right.
But of course, even AI has its limitations.
Right.
Some companies are great at talking the talk,
Yeah.
but not walking the walk.
Right.
So you still need to apply human judgment and analysis.
So it's not a question of AI versus humans.
Right.
It's about using AI as a tool to augment human intelligence.
Yes.
And make our analysis even more powerful.
Exactly. And ultimately, I think thematic purity is best assessed by combining all three approaches.
Okay.
Product revenue, sector analysis, and AI insights.
Right.
Along with good old-fashioned fundamental research.
So it's a multifaceted approach
Yeah.
that takes into account both quantitative data and qualitative analysis.
That's right. Because remember, thematic investing is not just about chasing trends.
Right.
It's about making informed investment decisions based on a deep understanding of the forces shaping our world and the companies that are best positioned to benefit from those changes.
Right.
Yeah. So that is
thematic purity.
Yeah, thematic purity. Fascinating stuff. Okay, this is all really fascinating, but let's be honest.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it all comes down to performance, right?
Yeah.
If a thematic portfolio doesn't actually deliver on its promise of returns, that's the point.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Performance is the ultimate measure of success in any investment strategy.
Right.
And thematic investing is no different.
Right.
But this is where things can get a bit tricky.
Okay.
How do you actually measure the performance of a thematic portfolio?
Right.
And what are the benchmarks you should be using for comparison? I'm glad you brought that up because I've heard that thematic funds can be volatile.
Yeah.
They can have these periods of explosive growth, but then they might suddenly slump.
Right.
So how do you know if you're just riding a wave of hype or if there's real sustainable value being created?
That's the key question.
Yeah.
And it highlights the importance of having a robust performance measurement process in place.
Okay.
You need to be able to track the performance of your thematic portfolio over time and compare it not just to the broad market, but also to a relevant thematic benchmark or peer group.
So it's not just about beating the S&P 500.
Right.
It's about outperforming other investments that are focused on the same theme.
Exactly. You want to see if the portfolio manager is actually adding value through their stock selection.
All right.
Or if they're just riding the coattails of a popular trend.
Right.
The research paper we've been discussing has some excellent examples of how to analyze performance in different scenarios.
Can you walk us through some of those examples?
Absolutely.
I'm curious to see how this all plays out in the real world.
Let's say you've invested in a thematic portfolio that's focused on artificial intelligence.
Okay.
You might see that the portfolio has generated a 15% return over the past year.
Okay.
Which sounds pretty good on the surface.
Yeah, 15%.
But then you look at a benchmark index that tracks AI-related companies.
Okay.
And you see that it's returned 20% over the same period.
Oh, so in that case, the thematic portfolio actually underperformed the benchmark.
Exactly.
Even though it generated a positive return.
Exactly. That's why it's so important to have those comparative benchmarks in place.
Right.
It helps you assess whether the portfolio manager is truly skilled at picking winning stocks within the theme.
Yeah.
Or if they're just benefiting from a rising tide that's lifting all boats.
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
It's about separating the skill from the luck.
Exactly.
So to speak.
Yeah.
But what about those scenarios where a thematic portfolio does outperform the benchmark? How do you know if that outperformance is sustainable?
Well, that's where you need to dig deeper into the portfolio's holdings and understand the drivers of that outperformance.
Okay.
Is it because the portfolio manager has identified some hidden gems that are undervalued by the market?
Right.
Or is it because they've taken on more risk, perhaps by concentrating their holdings in a smaller number of companies?
So it's about understanding the trade-offs between risk and reward.
Absolutely.
Higher returns might come with higher volatility, and that's something investors need to be comfortable with.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important to have a clear understanding of your own risk tolerance and investment goals before diving into thematic investing.
Right.
It's not a one-size-fits-all approach.
This all makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But I do have one more question about performance. How do you account for the fact that thematic trends tend to play out over long periods of time?
Right.
I mean, we're talking about decades,
Yeah.
not quarters or even years.
Yeah.
How do you measure performance in a way that captures that long-term perspective?
That's a really important point, and it's something that investors often overlook.
Yeah.
Thematic investing is not a get-rich-quick scheme.
Right.
It's a long-term investment strategy that requires patience and a willingness to ride out the inevitable ups and downs of the market.
So you're saying that short-term performance fluctuations shouldn't necessarily be a cause for concern.
Exactly. The research paper actually highlights this with some fascinating data.
Okay.
It shows that missing even the best year of a thematic cycle can significantly reduce your overall returns.
Wow.
So if you're constantly jumping in and out of thematic investments,
Right.
trying to time the market,
Right.
you might end up missing out on the biggest gains.
So it's like that old saying,
Yeah.
time in the market is more important than timing the market.
Precisely, patience is a virtue in investing,
Right.
especially when it comes to thematic investing.
Okay. I'm starting to get the feeling that thematic investing is not for the faint of heart.
Yeah.
It requires a certain level of conviction in the themes you're investing in, a willingness to ride out the volatility, and a long-term perspective on your investment goals.
That's a great summary.
Yeah.
It's not just about chasing trends.
Yeah.
It's about aligning your investments with your beliefs about
Okay.
the future
Right.
and having a long-term vision for where you want your money to go.
Speaking of aligning investments with beliefs, there's one more angle I'm curious to explore. ESG investing.
Okay.
We hear so much about it these days.
Right.
But where does it fit into the world of thematic investing?
That's a great question, and it's one that's generating a lot of debate and discussion.
Right.
Some people believe that ESG factors should be integrated into all investment decisions, including thematic investing,
Right.
while others argue that ESG is a separate consideration altogether.
So it's not a black and white issue.
Right.
There are different perspectives on how ESG and thematic investing intersect.
Exactly, and I think it's important to recognize that nuance. On the one hand, you can certainly have thematic portfolios that are specifically focused on ESG issues.
Okay.
For example, you might have a portfolio that invests in companies developing renewable energy solutions
Okay.
or promoting sustainable agriculture practices.
Right.
These would be considered impact investments, where the goal is to generate both financial returns and positive social or environmental outcomes.
So in that case, ESG factors are actually driving the thematic investment strategy.
Precisely. But on the other hand, you can also have thematic portfolios that are not explicitly focused on ESG,
Right.
but still incorporate ESG considerations into their investment process.
Okay.
For example, a portfolio manager might choose to avoid investing in companies with poor environmental records
Right.
or those involved in controversial industries, even if those companies are otherwise aligned with the thematic theme.
So it's about integrating ESG principles into the investment decision-making process.
Exactly.
Even if ESG is not the primary driver of the thematic strategy?
Exactly, and I think that's where things are heading in the world of investing.
Okay.
Investors are increasingly demanding that their portfolios reflect their values, and ESG factors are becoming a more prominent part of the investment conversation.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
It's about aligning your investments with your personal beliefs and values,
exactly.
whether that's about sustainability, social justice,
Yeah.
or any other issue that you care about.
Absolutely, and I think that's a really positive development.
Yeah.
It means that investors are thinking more holistically about the impact of their investments and demanding that companies be held accountable for their actions.
So let's say you've decided that you want to incorporate thematic investing into your portfolio.
Okay.
What are some of the practical steps you should take? Where do you even begin?
Well, I think the first step is to really think about your investment goals and your time horizon.
Okay.
Are you looking for long-term growth?
Right.
Are you trying to generate income? Are you interested in specific themes or sectors?
It's like creating a roadmap for your investments.
Yeah.
You need to have a clear destination in mind before you can plot the course.
Precisely. And once you have a better understanding of your goals,
Right.
you can start to research different thematic investment options.
Okay.
There are a variety of ways to access thematic investments,
Okay.
including mutual funds,
Right.
exchange-traded funds, ETFs,
Okay.
and even individual stocks.
So there's a whole spectrum of options available,
Right.
depending on your level of comfort and expertise.
Exactly. If you're new to investing, you might want to start with a diversified thematic mutual fund or ETF.
Okay.
These funds pool money from multiple investors and invest in a basket of companies that are aligned with a particular theme.
Okay.
This gives you instant diversification and professional management.
So it's like having a team of experts doing the research and stock picking for you.
That's right.
Okay.
But if you're a more experienced investor and you're comfortable doing your own research, you could consider investing in individual stocks that are aligned with the themes you're interested in.
But that also carries a higher level of risk.
Right.
You're essentially betting on individual companies rather than a diversified portfolio.
Exactly. So it's important to weigh the risks and rewards carefully
Right.
and make sure you're comfortable with the level of volatility before investing in individual stocks.
Okay, so you've done your research,
Right.
you've chosen your investment vehicle,
Uh-huh.
and you're ready to pull the trigger.
Okay.
What are some of the key things to watch out for as you manage your thematic portfolio over time?
Well, one of the most important things is to stay informed about the themes you're invested in.
Okay.
Remember, these are long-term trends,
Right.
and the landscape can change over time.
Right.
New technologies emerge, consumer preferences evolve, geopolitical events can shift the playing field.
So it's not a set it and forget it approach.
Right.
You need to stay engaged and adapt your portfolio as needed.
Exactly. It's about being an active investor, not a passive observer.
Right.
And that means monitoring the performance of your portfolio, staying up to date on industry news and trends,
Mm-hmm.
and reevaluating your investment thesis periodically to make sure it still holds true.
So it's like being a captain navigating a ship.
Yeah,
You need to constantly adjust your course based on the changing winds and currents.
that's a perfect analogy. And speaking of navigation,
Yeah.
I think it's time for us to chart a course to our final segment.
Okay, sounds good.
We'll wrap up our deep dive into thematic investing by exploring some of the key takeaways
Okay.
and leaving you with some thought-provoking questions to ponder.
All right, so welcome back. We've covered a ton in this deep dive
We have.
into thematic investing.
Yeah.
From, understanding those big global trends to actually picking winning companies.
Right.
And figuring out how to measure performance.
Yeah,
I feel like I could go build my own thematic portfolio now.
I think you can.
But before we wrap up, I think it would be good to kind of like distill all of this information into some key takeaways
Absolutely.
for our listeners.
Yeah.
So what are the most important things to remember about thematic investing?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that thematic investing is about more than just chasing the latest fads.
Right.
It's a long-term investment strategy that requires a thoughtful
Right.
and strategic approach.
It's not about jumping on the bandwagon just because something is
Exactly.
getting a lot of media attention.
Yeah, you have to understand those underlying forces that are shaping the world
Right.
and identify the companies that are truly positioned to benefit from those trends.
Right. A good story doesn't always translate into a good investment. You
Exactly.
need to look beyond the hype and really focus on those
Yeah.
investable themes.
The investable themes.
Dig deep into those sub-themes and carefully evaluate the fundamentals of the companies that you're looking at.
That's like being a detective,
Yeah.
piecing together the clues
Yeah.
to find those hidden gems
Yes.
that are truly aligned with the thematic trends.
And don't forget diversification.
Oh, that's so important.
Right. Spreading your risk across different sub-themes and companies
Yeah.
within a thematic portfolio.
Yeah, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket,
Right.
even if you're super excited about a particular theme.
Right. Exactly. And thematic investing is an active strategy.
It is, yeah.
It's not set it and forget it.
No.
You have to stay informed
Yeah.
about those themes that you're investing in. You have to monitor the performance
Yes.
of your portfolio
Keep your finger on the pulse.
and be prepared to adapt as needed.
Absolutely. You've got to be an engaged investor,
Right.
not a passive bystander.
Yeah, exactly. And when it comes to measuring performance, make sure you're comparing your thematic portfolio to not just the broad market,
Right.
but to a relevant thematic benchmark as well.
Yes. Make sure you're getting the alpha that you're paying for.
Right, exactly. And finally, be patient.
Ah, so important.
Thematic trends play out over long periods, so don't get discouraged if you don't see results right away.
Yeah, remember time in the market is more important than timing the market.
Absolutely, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we've covered a lot of ground here,
A lot.
but I want to leave our listeners with something
Oh.
to think about.
Yeah.
The research paper that we talked about today
Mm-hmm.
highlights all these major trends
Yeah.
that are expected to reshape the world,
Totally.
like the rise of artificial intelligence,
Yeah.
shift to renewable energy, the aging of the global population.
Yeah. Huge trend.
Those are all forces that are going to redefine how we live,
They are.
how we work, how we consume.
And how we interact with the world around us.
So my question to you, listener,
Yes.
is which of these themes
Yeah.
do you find most compelling?
Yeah. What sparks your imagination?
Wow.
Where do you see the greatest opportunities and challenges?
Yeah, and which themes resonate with your values
Yes.
and your beliefs about the future? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Share them on social media.
Yes, absolutely.
And until next time, happy investing.
Happy investing.